What's happening, everyone? Welcome to the Sportscast. It's me, Andy Grant. I've got Gary Judge here with me from across the park. Before we get started on this week's Sportscast, what I will say is we've got our fantasy football up and going again. And here at the Legged Podcast, we've got ourselves a bit of an expert. He was someone who won our first ever fantasy, and he's your fantasy football scout. And he's done a report on the players to have in and the players to ditch already for this season. So if you want to get access to that, join our Patreon. It's £4 a month. You'll get access to that. Also, you don't have to be a Patreon member, although we'd love it if you are. And you can join our Fantasy Premier League. It's 20 quid a pop. And I think last year the winner took home over £1,000. All the info's on our Instagram, so we'd love you if you could come and join our league. But like you say, if you do want a bit of an insight on someone who knows what it takes to win it, then we've got our own fantasy football Legged scout for you there. This weekend...
Can I ask a question, Andy?
Yeah?
Is he playing this year? Is he actually playing in the league?
Yeah.
I want to stitch it up, is he?
That's a good point, that. I'm going to ask him if he's going to reveal, because I read his Patreon post and he's just signed up a scout. So maybe he'll give his name up in weeks to come. I don't know, but he is good at it. So
he's like the what's his name again from Top Gear? The Stig.
Yeah. Yeah. So that'll be good fun. And also, I know it's not for everyone. It can be a touchy subject. We did have a few messages about it last time, but I am bringing back the betting show. We've thought long and hard about this because the Legged the Legged Podcast is going to be about kind of a lot of, I don't want to say health and well-being, but there's going to be so much more to it than just a Sportscast. It's going to be Wednesday, it's going to be a running club going, a bit of a lifestyle. But as we know, me and I know Gary does as well, does like a little gamble now and again, but it's not for everyone. So if you do want to get involved with the betting show, then I am going to be doing a Patreon video. We'll post every week. Gary's going to jump on now and again, but it's not going to be kind of for the Legged Podcast. It's just on Patreon. So again, the first one of them will start this weekend. I think that's it, mate. Let's get bang into it. With the Prem season starting, it is going to be majority about the Prem, but a few little bits and bobs in the world of boxing, which again, I'm fucking so glad I'm not an avid fan, because I'd just be pulling my hair out, banging my head against a brick wall, and arguably want to chop my other leg off, because it's the most frustrating sport, I think, known to man. I mean, something which kind of, when you think about what boxing is, it's almost medieval. It's like gladiator type, isn't it? It's like, in an arena, two men trying to hurt one another. It's like barbaric. It's in our nature. It's animalistic. It's all those things. Yeah. And yet it disappoints week in, week out. This week.
Can I just slightly disagree with you, Andy? I think it's a little bit unfair to label boxing as that. I think at times it is, they're guilty of that. The promoters can be, the fighters can be, but it's more specifically the heavyweight division in the last few years. I mean, you only have to go back a week ago to see the Terence Crawford, Errol Spence fight. Two fighters that made a fight, both in their prime, both as good as they can be, both unbeaten. I don't think it's fair to say that every single weight class and is guilty of the type of shenanigans that's gone on a heavyweight. Now, I know you're going to point to the Conor Benn thing. Yeah, fair enough. Look, a drug cheat equally, regardless of the verdict, he'll still be seen as that. But I think I wouldn't say that the other divisions are as guilty as heavyweight has been.
I understand your point. You make a good point. The point I'm getting at, though, is when you look at what boxing is, and for example, how often boxing's meant to happen, if you like, this happens every week, Gary. It's not as if this is once in a blue moon.
What does though? Someone fail a drug test?
Yeah, it seems to be happening. And I don't, by the way, I don't just mean the drug stuff. I mean, Fury shenanigans. You've got all the boxing promotion shenanigans, how it's even marketed on, whether it's the Zone or Sky. I mean, everything about it. I get what you say. Yeah, you get the odd fight like Errol Spence, and how many of them are going to happen a year? Maybe that might happen this year, where then you take into account all the other problems that come along with this sport. And I think, I don't want to speak on behalf of every fair weather boxing fan, but you just think, you know what? Yeah, I just think, it's not even fucking worth it, because, like I say, that Errol Spence fight and Crawford, you think, wow, amazing. If it was like that, maybe every couple of months, maybe you could get on board with it. But rather than a great fight happening every couple of months, there's some sort of crazy controversy with either a fighter, not a fighter, drugs, fights not happening, fights happening in bloody Saudi, TV money, this money, someone not getting paid, someone ducking. And I just think, you know what, mate, it's just...
Is that just not the... Is that not the modern world, along with something that's been so established for so long as well? I think, you know, listen, I don't completely disagree with what you're saying. I don't, and I'm as frustrated as anyone when fights like this don't get made for whatever reason. And as you say, it's not just down to the fighters at times, you know, and drugs. Sometimes it's not making weight. Sometimes it's arguments over TV deals and whatever. I get it, but again, I would say that it's almost a feature of modern society that too many people are involved. There's too many people looking to try and get their, you know, their cut off the top. Everyone's got their own little agenda, and I think it's just you know, it's the commercial world that we live in, where there's always a slight, you know, there's always something that can put a spanner in the works. And what you find, I think, is the sports that are more in their infancy and haven't been corrupted by all that are able to be consistent. So like UFC, for example, which relative to boxing is a baby, isn't it? You know, it's only been around for a few years in terms of it being globalized. You don't see that type of nonsense going on because there's only like 2 or 3 parties involved. There's the UFC, who are the promoter, effectively. There's the fighters, and there's the TV, and that's it. There's no one else involved.
I know, and again, you can make a great counterpoint, and I do agree with what you're saying there. My point being, though, is when you take all the good things about boxing and all the negative things about boxing, to me personally, it seems to get massively outweighed by the negative stuff. If you look at Dillian Whyte, for example, not to pick on him, but he's in the news this week. He failed the drugs test. This is the 3rd time he's failed the drugs test. You know, this isn't like happening. No, boxing's not learning from any of these controversies that are happening again and again and again. And for me, it's just making me want to switch off.
I think what's frustrating is that, you know, this term's used a lot in football. It's like trying to put it the right way, because I'll probably say words out of place and it'll make it sound airing your dirty laundry or whatever it is. You know what I mean? It always tries to come out in the public, doesn't it? Like it's poor that this isn't dealt with and dealt with in a more efficient manner, and it does an impact on the main event. So think of how many times. I mean, and this is the good thing about it. You very rarely hear about footballers failing drug test. That's because the FA, the Premier League, deal with it. They wrap it under, you know, they put it under wraps. It's an injury or whatever. It doesn't affect, you know, it doesn't come out in the news, and for good reason. And I'm not defending Dillian Whyte here, because I've heard plenty of boxers talk about this. I'm not a boxer, and listen, for good reason, mate. I don't want to get my head smashed in, and I'm not hard enough. But what they say, and it's a very fair point, is you go in that ring and you're putting your life at risk. You know, you're putting your life on the line, your family and everything. And if someone's trying to get an unfair advantage, not just a competitive advantage, it's an advantage that could potentially take your life away. So what I'm going to, and slightly going off point here, but my question would be, what kind of state of mind is Dillian Whyte in to be making that decision, or his team making that decision? So the reason I make that point is that, you know, this fight's been cancelled. You know, Dillian Whyte's being pulled through, you know, over the coals or whatever, rightfully so. But what about Dillian Whyte? What you know, what's going on in his head? Is he all right? Do you know what I mean? Like, if that was football, for example, I don't want to compare apples with apples here, because footballers, you know, when they go on the pitch and potentially cheat and haven't got the potential to maybe take someone's life away like a boxer has. But if that was a footballer that was a failed drugs test, it wouldn't come out in public. They'd be sending them straight off to rehab. They'd be investigating it behind the scenes, and someone else would come in and take their place, and it would be dealt with. Whereas this has been, you know, incredibly public, hasn't it?
Yeah. It's but again, I think you can go into all the different points. I just think, mate, on the whole, for the general boxing fan who likes when there's a big pay-per-view on, and I pay for them, you know, now and again, and when there's a good one, something that gets me interested. For me, the majority of the time, boxing is just letting itself down again and again and again. And this fight that they've got you've got a guy, and I personally have not even heard of. Apparently, he fought last week in a castle. I don't know. He's going to.
I mean, listen, look, a few things moving past that, and I take your point, and you certainly got probably your point is more shared by the general public in terms of the frustrations of the fact that there's another big fight.
People like yourself who make an articulated point, and I completely understand you and them. I'm just saying, for me, and what I would guess is the majority of people will probably be like, you know what, I'm not worth it.
Yeah, I don't completely disagree. You're probably just trying to make it more interesting. But just to put a bit of a positive slant on this weekend, one, an opponent stepped in. Now, you're right, and I'll speak about the opponents in a moment. But an opponent stepped in. The fight still goes ahead. Pay-per-view, there is no pay-per-view now. Pay-per-view's been cancelled, so credit to some extent the promoters and the TV to say, look, this isn't worthy of it. It's not the fight we've advertised. But credit to Hellenius for stepping in. Wow, I guess it's a win-win situation, isn't it? You're stepping in with, what you would call a week's notice. However, as you rightly say, he's only fought a couple of weeks ago anyway. I was just checking that out, exactly what the date was.
I think it was
yeah, the 5th. So it literally was. It was last week. So he's in good nick. He's had a relatively easy workout, I think, against.
And he's getting a big, massive payday.
Yeah, I'm sure he's getting a few quid. I'm sure he is getting a few quid. But look, it's a walkover. He's a big punch bag. Like, he was in with Deontay Wilder a year or so ago. It was over in about 2 minutes. You look down his record. Every time he's come up against anyone half decent, he's been beaten. He got beat by Dillian Whyte 5 years ago, and that was the Dillian Whyte that was, if you like, the former Dillian Whyte. He was a lesser version of the fighter he is now. His record is bang average, and for me, he's a big punch bag. 20 something in the world or whatever, but he's a big guy. That's about it. It's just a perfect opponent for Joshua to just get a few rounds in. I think Joshua will be disappointed he doesn't have him out of there inside the first 3 or 4. Given the fact that he'll look at that record and think, well, Wilder's got him out of there in the first round. That's the level I'm at. I should be making a statement here, and he should be. Make no bones about that. And he'll feel. I think Joshua is all about the commercial side of it, isn't he? Of it being a business and it being attractive. And I think he'll want to give the fans something to kind of get out the seats about. And he'll be very disappointed, I think, if he doesn't make short work of him.
Yeah. No, completely agree. You had the again, not to take the piss out of boxing or the fighting world again, but you had a kind of mixed fight again with Jake Paul and Nate Diaz. I think I'd be the lesser said about that than better. He won over points, eight rounds, I think, was it?
He did nearly knock him out as well, by the way. I did say that, didn't he? He has him on his ass.
But again, I don't think he's ever been knocked out cold, Nate Diaz. I think we both kind of agreed, didn't we, on the points last week, and I think Nate got a payday. Jake Paul kept his kind of crest of a wave going. He's got his new Netflix documentary thing out at the minute. I think everyone walked away from that pretty happy.
It's a different sport, isn't it? Let's just accept that now. For me, it's a different sport. It's a bit like 2020 cricket. Some cricketers go and play 2020 cricket just to smash the ball around the pitch, and they couldn't even hold their own in a test match. So I think that the quicker we start to accept these social media or influencers who are trying to turn it as a different sport, the better. And let's just kind of leave it where it is. And for the people who want to talk about it, great. But it's not for me, though.
Yeah, no, totally agree. We had, before we touch on the Women's World Cup, maybe you had a mad little thing in the tennis as well. Me and you both spoke to me about Eubanks, who made such a great impact at Wimbledon. And we kind of, I don't even think it was on the Sportscast. I think it was just on text, wasn't it? Or it might have been.
Oh, you mentioned Eubanks says you're looking forward to seeing him in the US Open.
And then you text me midweek saying he's just crossed out the Canadian Open or the Canadian.
The first round, he got battered by Gael Monfils, who's a bang average, almost a journeyman now. Do you know what I mean? He's like,
he was back in the day, though. Monfils.
He was good, but he must be mid, maybe late 30s now. He's seen better days, and he got out saved by him. Like,
and that's just a warm up. This is the warm up for the US Open, a little kind of small one in Canada, and so I hope Eubanks is managing to turn that around pretty quick, because I think it starts next week. But then you had
before we go completely bash boxing, did you see the I wouldn't say it was a face off, but Chris Eubank, the boxer, and Liam Smith got online, didn't they, and had like a half an hour. It's worth watching, by the way. We're not going to analyse it on here because you haven't seen it, but clearly, but definitely worth a watch for anyone who wants a bit of entertainment, because Beefy, further to the first fight, takes everything, it washes right off his back, and he laughs his head off, particularly now that he's beaten Eubank by knockout. But it's just it's good value. It's a good watch.
But I might get onto that.
But go on, tennis. I took that off.
Yeah, just a bit of a feel-good story as well, because I think I've been saying for a while now, people, sometimes treat me and stuff and have a pop at me thinking that I have a go at British tennis all the time, but it was actually you told me about a bit of a good news story coming from the world of British tennis.
Yeah, Dan Evans won his first ATP 500 title, which, it basically considered a proper title. It's rated by the ATP. I think the 500 stands for how many points they get for it. I might be wrong there, but it obviously carries a lot of weight in the ATP. I think that took him up to 21 in the world, which, for anyone who doesn't know Dan Evans' story, again, have a little Google. I'm not going to go through his life story, but he basically was a bit of a wild child and, a talented tennis player, but was constantly out on the ale. I think he was, admittedly said that he was, dabbling in social drugs on a regular basis, but got himself sober, started to take tennis seriously. I think he's now 34, so he's a bit late to the party, but credit him, do you know what I mean? He's had a really good run. I think after winning that title, he did actually bow out of the next tournament a few days later, but I think he put that down to a little bit of mental fatigue from the decent run he's had. But credit to Dan Evans, and as you say, bit of a nod to British tennis that, despite the fact that, we're not up there as some of the other nations are, particularly maybe the Americans, but we've still got probably more, we certainly have got more players in the top 100, 200 than we ever did 10, 15 years ago. So,
yeah, I think one thing about me is I can sometimes maybe come across, but actually maybe I'm just quite harsh that if we're not kind of sitting at the top table at creme de la creme, it's very easy, and I'll do it sometimes to think, we're not doing great at it. And like you say, we've probably got, I'd have to look at it, we'll take your words for it, we've got, a lot of players in and amongst kind of mediocre, but it's just sort of frustrating when, as a nation of, sport lovers, if you like, we're not really at the top table in many sports, should I say, but...
Not enough. I mean, just before we move past tennis, though, Andy Murray looks in good nick,
Yeah.
You can never really, you can never be too sure. There's always...
Write him off, can you, as of late?
No, you can't, but he looks in good nick. I was flicking through the channels the other day when, there was some tennis on, and I caught one of the sets. I think he won the second set 6-love against an half-decent opponent, and he looks good. He looks in good shape, and you're right, you never can write him off because he's got the experience, he's got the ability. If he can physically hold himself together for 4 or 5 straight matches, you never know.
Yeah. Should we move on to the Prem?
Let's do it.
So what me and Gary done this week, and I've just looked at it, you won't actually have seen mine, so I've got a head start on yours. I have actually sent it.
Yeah, that was horrible. I put it in the group, by the way, for the benefit of everyone. I put my league table and all my little predictions in the group, and Andy's read, I'll send
a screenshot. It's got a little red mark by it where it obviously hasn't sent. I'm up in the Greek mountains at the moment, so that's why my signal's not great. So I did send it, but you're going to have to just take my word for it. So before we go into the Prem, we can probably just by doing this, we'll probably give our little kind of view of the Prem as a whole. We've gathered on our top goal scorer, players to keep an eye on, surprise package, teams we'd like to see, we expect to see drop off, and a bit of a league table. So a good place to start, mate, would be the top goal scorer, because there's been some news in. Thankfully today, normally news breaks after we've recorded the podcast. It's actually broke just before it. Bayern have actually had an offer accepted for Kane. It's now down to Kane to basically have the conversation with him and his missus, the one that me and you have been having for the past month. Should I go and win trophies or stay in the Prem and become Tottenham's all-time leading goal scorer?
And the Premier League.
Yeah, and he's already Tottenham's, isn't he? So he's,
yeah.
So you actually put down Haaland as your top goal scorer. Oh, sorry, you Kane.
I'd say, yeah. So mine was, I said Harry Kane. I think if Harry Kane stays, I think they're building the team around him. I think Postecoglou will play him as an out-and-out 9. And looking at the game he plays, I can't remember who it was. It was a pre-season friendly the night. He was literally playing like, he scored 4, yeah, but he was playing so high, a lot higher than I've seen him play for a good few years. And considering last year, he was 6 goals behind Haaland last year in probably the worst Tottenham side that we've seen in 10 years in terms of position and output.
You sent an article which I actually read, and I think when you think of the difference in Kane and Haaland, I know when you just say the names, you just think Haaland's on another planet. But even when you say that, he was only 6 goals behind. You think of that City team, you think of Spurs, you think, bloody hell, he's done good to get even that close, considering.
Yeah, definitely. And I just feel that I think with Maddison the team, I think Son can't have as bad a season as he did last season. I really believe he'll get more goals, and I think his XG will improve next season, which is obviously a phrase that the pundits throw about a lot, but all it means is that he's more likely to score than he was last season. And I know the stats tell you that he takes his chances in a lot higher frequency or better frequency than Haaland does. So that's the simple logic there for me. But if not, and that's like a little asterisk, I said, if he doesn't, it'll be Haaland by, I think, a country distance.
Yeah, well, on that one, I actually put Haaland again, but my asterisk was I think he'll drop off. I don't think he'll score as many. This whole idea of he's had one season and now watch him get even better, I don't think it'll be the case. I think if anything, teams will get better, defenders will get better, and I think he'll still become top goal scorer, maybe around the early 30 mark. But I don't think he'll be breaking any more records that he did this season. I think unbelievable still, but 25 to 32, 33. I don't think he'll be getting more than that. I hope I'm right anyway.
I hate to say it, and I hate I'm wrong here. I hope I'm wrong here. I think Nunez will have a good season for you. I think if he plays regularly in that number 9 position, I think he'll double, if not triple his tally from last season.
Yeah, well, that brings us on nicely, because one of the players to keep an eye on for me was Nunez. I think a couple of reasons, really. I think a lot of pressure was on him last season because they both made the move at the same time, Haaland and Nunez. Even the Community Shield, you can remember Haaland having a stinker, Nunez scoring, and straight away it was like, wow, Liverpool got the better player. And we all know that worked out. I think Nunez, like most club players, to be fair, in that Liverpool team, they need maybe 6 months a year. I think Nunez has had that now. Last season, he's shown glimpses of looking like a decent player. He's had a couple in pre-season, and I think with the likes of this Szoboszlai and McAllister, hoping they get a few more midfielders, but even just on them two. And I think Klopp really having a bit between his teeth, wanting to kick on. I think Nunez could be one of those players that really takes advantage of it and can yeah. I mean, I'm not going to say go and surpass what Haaland did last season, but I think he'll take the monkey off his back of being this kind of bit of a joke striker, which I think he became a little bit last season. And I think, I think Nunez will do well. And just before I go into yours, I actually did pick another Liverpool player. I picked 3 players altogether, 4. Picked Nunez and Harvey Elliott as well. I think at times, well, he's got a bit of stick, but he's going to get more chances now just because of Liverpool's midfield. I personally really like him as well. He's had a decent summer with the England under-21s along with Curtis Jones. I think Harvey Elliott could make an impact. And my other 2 are Mason Mount, United. I'm a big fan of Ten Hag. We've mentioned him loads. I think what he's building at United, and I think it could be a perfect little project for Mason Mount. I think he will. I've never really been a big fan of him, to be honest, at Chelsea, but I think he'll do well. And the other one I put down, which sounds terrible because I can't even think of his name, is what's the Aston Villa striker, the English lad?
Ollie Watkins.
Ollie Watkins, yeah, fancy him. I mean, he had a great season last season, but I really think he can, keep an eye on him. I think he'll do well as well. There's my 4: Nunez, Elliott, Mason Mount, and Watkins.
Okay, I added another one on when you were talking, just because I felt bad that I didn't have an Everton player in there, and I was thinking about him anyway. But I've tried to be a little bit less conventional. Not that you've gone, major conventional, but Moussa Diaby is my first one. Villa signed him from Leverkusen in the summer. I loved him in the Bundesliga, and I always thought, watching him regularly, that he'd be a perfect fit for the Premier League. Villa have gone and snapped him up. Unai Emery, the way he played last year, I wouldn't say he played on the break, but they weren't a team that just constantly dominated possession. They were looking to try and penetrate as often as they could. That's why Ollie Watkins done so well playing off the shoulder. I think he'll flourish because, as you rightfully say, Ollie Watkins has a really good second half to last season. I think that'll mean he'll get a lot of attention from defenders. I think Moussa Diaby might go under the radar a little bit more in that forward line, and I think he'll really hit the ground running. For me, second one is I'll start with one before the other one. Josh Brownhill, Burnley centre mid. I think he's captain this season. He's played in the Prem before a couple of years back when under Sean Dyche obviously went down. He's been completely reinvented under Vincent Kompany. I was looking at his stats last time he was in the Premier League, and I think it was like 1 assist, maybe 1 goal. Last season it was 8 goals, 9 assists. He's been made into a creative midfielder, almost like their quarterback, but he gets involved. He shoots from outside the box. He looks a much better player than he was last time he was in the Prem, and I really think he'll step up this time. The third one is a little bit of a sentimental one, and it's David Brooks of Bournemouth. A few people will remember him from last time Bournemouth were in the Premier League, and a lot of people know that he was diagnosed 2 years ago, almost to the day, with a Hodgkin lymphoma, which is a horrible disease. And remarkably, he's back playing in the Premier League, which is an amazing story. But he's, it's not just for the sentimental reasons. He's a highly talented player, and I think it'd just be brilliant to see him get back to the way he was and maybe continue the trajectory that he was achieving when he was younger. The last one for me is an Everton player, and that's James Garner, another player who was a big figure in that under-21 success in the summer. Suffered with injuries last season. I think by his own admission, I think physically maybe he needs to do a little bit of work off the pitch to be stronger. He's looked immense in pre-season, as you probably expect, having played in the 21s as well earlier. But he's a really talented, very, very good footballer. Very different to the other midfielders because he's technically outstanding. Very good from set plays as well. So you'd imagine that Sean Dyche has done a lot of work on set plays, and he'll probably be one of those ones who'll benefit from a statistical point of view. So he's the last one for me. So it's Moussa Diaby from Villa, David Brooks from Bournemouth, Josh Brownhill, Burnley, and James Garner, Everton.
Mate, that's our point where Muskie, our producer, at any point during the season, those 8 players happen to do something immense. I want that clipped up on our little camera focus for a moment, please.
Or they're getting hammered for being crap.
There'll just be someone on Twitter screen recording them.
Yeah.
That ain't Andy, fuck all about footy.
Be wrong.
Yeah. Onto the surprise packages then, mate. I went for, I've put in brackets here, I'd love to see Luton be the surprise package, although I can't see it. I mean, I'd love that. I'd love them to make their ground into a bit of a really hostile atmosphere, and no one can get any points there because it
is anyway. It's horrible, isn't it?
I'd love that to come through, and them to be, after an amazing home record, and them to be the surprise package. Unfortunately, I think they will go back down, which I'll come on to in a minute. But the surprise package for me, which one of them arguably isn't so much of a surprise because they have been a bit of a revelation under Unai Emery, but Aston Villa, I think they'll do brilliant again. Albeit I'm going to come back on myself because when it comes to the league table, I don't think they'll necessarily improve league position, but I just think from a surprise package with regards to, you already mentioned a couple of players there from them, the manager, I think they will improve. I think they've got European football, I think. So I expect them to keep on doing really well under Unai Emery. And my second surprise package is Nottingham Forest. I thought last season, a lot of people had them down for the drop. They brought in so many players, and it was a bit like, wow, the chairman gave the manager a new contract, arguably when he could have very easily got sacked. And I just think having a pre-season with so many players, they've obviously let a few go. They brought in a couple of things as well. I just fancied them to just gel a bit more. Second season now, and I mean, I wouldn't be crazily surprised to see them a bit more closer to the kind of mid-table, spot than kind of fighting relegation as they were by Christmas last year.
No, fair enough. I'm completely with you on Villa, by the way. And this is not a tip, by the way, but it's a bit like the Sweden women's one. Just an observation. Villa, I think, at the moment, let's see. I think they play Japan tomorrow, but if they get past Japan, they've got a very good chance. Aston Villa 8-1 to win the Europa Conference League. We all know Unai Emery's records in the Europa League is phenomenal.
5 times.
Yeah, 5 times. Phenomenal record with Sevilla and Villarreal. What a price that is. I think it's 8-1 at the time of speaking for the Conference League, so get on that. But with that, I think they've got a squad well equipped to do well in Europe. The likes of Tillemans, the likes of Diaby and Watkins, as we've said. They brought in Pau Torres, very cultured centre-back. I think he'll be key in Europe and key against some of the teams that sit back because they play a back 3. So he'll be that centre-back who'll step into midfield and play. They've got a very balanced side now, Villa, and I think they could be a serious threat if they can keep the key players fit. They also got a couple of the players back from loan at Borough who were outstanding last season. I think they'll be good players and they'll be good additions to that squad. The other surprise package for me is Burnley. Again, I don't think it'll be too much of a surprise maybe for some people, but they have just come up and they haven't got a squad that's listed with household names by any means. I think there's very few players in their squad that you'd recognise apart from the recent ones they brought in, which is what's his face, oh my goodness, Nathan Redmond, I think, who's come back from Turkey. I think they brought him on a free transfer. He's certainly not a world beater. But listen, I've got a lot of time for what Vincent Kompany's done to take that team and that club from being what were considered to be long ball merchants, ugly football, to completely transform the squad, get rid of the old guards. It's amazing what he's done. I think he'll continue that this season. So they're my surprise package. They're my surprise packages.
Do you know what? I didn't never even come into my mind really as well, which is interesting because I don't have them down for the drop. I've actually got them quite high up in the table, so which would say that a surprise package considering them coming up. But yeah, great shout on a surprise. I'm definitely with you on that one. My two teams that I can see dropping off a little bit is first one's Newcastle. I've actually got them down to finish 6th when we go into the Prem in a minute. And I don't think it's going to be. It's weird, when I've done my Premier League table, if you like, I don't think it's going to be for the likes of Villa and Newcastle the one to try, and I think they're going to have decent seasons once again. But I just think there was too many teams last season who were crap, basically. Liverpool, Chelsea, Spurs. Straight away, there's 3 teams that are going to be knocking on the door for Champions League, which I think is going to mean that Newcastle just aren't going to be able to compete at that table, while still having a pretty inexperienced squad. They're going to have Champions League to contend with, and yeah, I just can't see them having the same season that they had last season, which I'm really interested in seeing how they get on, with this Saudi money. I really like the manager. I'm a big fan of Kieran Trippier. I think they'll do okay again, and let's see how they get on in the Champions League. But as far as making top 4 again, cannot see it. I can see a big drop-off coming off their way. And the other drop-off, which might not surprise some West Ham fans anyway, is West Ham, which you could say it's not going to be much of a drop-off if they don't get relegated, essentially, with them being in the battle last season. But at the end of the day, they did win some European, silverware. So I think West Ham last season, some of the fans were maybe a bit harsh on Moyes. I mean, I don't watch them week in, week out, but I've heard a lot of them moaning that his time and substitutions is the same thing every week. I mean, maybe a bit more from his time at Everton, but I think he was, I think he was a bit unfairly treated last season. End of the day, he did bring the trophy to them. But I think, it's going to be another kind of similar season of kind of relegation woes and battles, and I can't see them finishing any higher than kind of 16th, 17th mark once again.
Fair enough. So my drop-offs, I couldn't agree more with you, by the way, on Newcastle. I've got them finishing exactly the same position. I think I've probably got Villa in the same position as you. However, I haven't classed that as a drop-off. I just think it's just, as you suggested, the other teams returning to where they were, and Newcastle almost finding their rightful place, which is where 6th, I think, is about right for them. The drop-off I've got is Brighton. I think they caused a lot of people cold last season. I think a lot of people were expecting them, after they lost Graham Potter, to be a different side, to lose their impetus somewhat. Didn't happen, obviously. Zerbi's done a terrific job.
Didn't catch Everton cold though, did they?
No, they didn't, but that's what I'm going to point to. I think a lot of people, what they tend to do is they look at games, don't they, in a particular season and go, well, that's how you get at them. After that Everton game, I think they won maybe one game, but they did struggle a little bit. And I think a lot of teams, we're talking about the very pinnacle of football here. The coaching staff and analysis staff that these Premier League teams have got are the very best in the business, and they pick up on every little chink. And I think there was a chink in the armour there that was identified, I think, by Everton. And if Everton can do it with respect, then I think other teams will very much exploit it. I don't think it's going to be so much of a drop-off that puts them in trouble, but I think they'll be in the bottom half firmly, maybe around the 14th, 13th. I've actually got them as 12th. So I think that's a bit, certainly seen as a big drop-off. I haven't actually labelled more than one for the drop-off, but just looking at the table, I think the obvious one that sticks out, which maybe isn't seen as a drop-off massively, is Palace. And, Palace and Wolves, I've got them literally fighting for that. Who's going to go down as that third team? So, Palace, kind of climbs away, I think around March, April time, as did Wolves. I think both of them will be in the mire for most of next season. Palace losing Zaha is a big factor. Wolves losing what I think is, he was probably in the top 6 or 7 managers in the Premier League. Lopetegui's a very, very good manager, and I think that's something.
He's a starter as well.
Exactly. I think that'll be the nail in the coffin in terms of their Premier League survival, even so early to say that.
To be honest, we've been seeing with me saying West Ham was the drop off again, people are going to be thinking, how can they drop off? They nearly got relegated in the last game of the season. It was more to do with the European kind of winnings and anything like that. Whereas I think
I don't agree with you there, and I'll come on to it when we speak about the table in a moment. I don't agree with you for a number of reasons, but I think the biggest one being that I remember what David Moyes was like the first time we qualified properly. I know it wasn't the first time they qualified for Europe, but when we first started to get used to that, Thursday, Sunday, Thursday, Monday, we really struggled. And in the following season, or 2 seasons later, we really kicked on again. And it was in the summer after we hardly signed anyone. And it was the summer when everyone was writing us off. And he almost relishes that. And I know he's under a lot of pressure at the moment with the boards and with the director of football, because he keeps kind of turning down potential signings or, throwing spanners in the works. But I think David Moyes and his squads are generally at their best when the back's against the wall and people are kind of writing them off, and therefore I think they'll do okay.
Yeah, well, I feel like swapping down for Brighton now after giving your little your spiel, because I think as well, you rightly said Everton, I agree with, but also, potentially the news today is Liverpool have come in with a bid and outbid Chelsea for Caicedo, so they've already lost McAllister, potentially him as well. So yeah, I think
that team
might drop off from West Ham.
You know what? West Ham as well. Lucas Paqueta didn't really have much of a season last season, apart even how he's world class. Lucas Paqueta. I mean, you've seen City were basically sniffing around him. He's world class, mate. He's probably the best Brazilian midfielder out there. Along with what's his face at Newcastle. So he's a world class player. I think Ben Rama can get better there. I think Jared Bowen has an off season last season. There's players there that they're up there. There's some of the better players in the Premier League.
I think a lot of that then is going to come down to the pressure from the fans, because again, even with European success, all I've heard on the radio phone-ins over the summer is Moyes out. So I think if he loses, maybe he only gets 1 win in the first 5 or 6 or something, then maybe.
It's a results business in it, definitely.
Well, mate, we'll do like 3 or 4 at a time going down the table. Go on, kind of get to the end.
Should we go from the bottom up?
Okay, go on then. So my bottom 3, I've got Sheffield United to go straight back down. I've got them finishing in 20th. I don't know whether I've just done this on kind of my kind of memory and thoughts on Sheffield United, but I just can't see anything other. They had that stint a while back. Well, it's been a long time ago now, but I just can't see anything other than just them going straight back down. So I'll put them in 20th place. 19th, we've already mentioned them. Well, you did more. Wolves, I think losing the manager so late on, before the start of the season, I think they're going to really struggle. And I mentioned them before, I don't want them to go down because I think it's going to be really fun for the likes of Haaland and Salah and that to go down to Luton. But I just think Luton they're going to find it tough. So I've got Luton 18th, Wolves 19th, and Sheffield United 20th.
Well, I've got exactly the same bottom 3, but in a different order. The more I think about it, I don't disagree with Sheffield United finishing bottom, particularly if they lose Sander Berg, who I think is a Premier League player. Sander Berger is a Premier League player, and Burnley apparently are close to sealing the deal for him. They've lost Iliman Ndiaye, who was their best player last season in the forward positions. If they don't bring anyone in to replace them, I think they will struggle, but I think they'll get more points than Luton. So I've got Luton bottom, Sheffield United 19th, and Wolves 18th. I think there'll be a considerable gap between the team that I've got above them and the rest.
Really?
Come on to them. I think so, yeah.
Well, the one I've got finishing above them, which might surprise a few Evertonians that I've not put them in the bottom 3. But I don't say this with any glee, but I've got Everton finish 17th because I think maybe it might go down to the last game of the season again, but I can see he's been in amongst it again, only for the reason, which is, to me anyway, he's lost, Conor Cody, which I know towards the end of the season he wasn't getting a look in, was he? But he played well, for parts that season. You know what I mean?
It's the bigger loss.
Who?
Yerry Mina is the bigger loss based on the end of last
season. And I just think the people you brought in, I mean, Danjuma, I've been, impressed that he was able to kind of get him type thing. I think with Calvert-Lewin, keeping him fit, we've seen against the Brighton game, we touched on it then, when he plays, you're out a real handful, you've got a way to play, but you just can't bank on him. And the fact that there hasn't been nowhere near enough transfer activity at all.
No.
I just can't see anything different. It's nothing to do with anything other than I don't see a different Everton. And Everton really, really struggled last year. So my next three up are Everton at 17. I've got West Ham again, struggling at around the 16th mark. And I've got Bournemouth in 15th.
Bournemouth 15th.
Yep. Just think so just with Bournemouth, I just think those kind of clubs anything from between like 10th to 15th, I just almost think like nothing seasons really, isn't it? You know, they're just a bit like, you know, they're not going to be, potentially might be in the relegation fight, but I just think, just a bit of a boring 15th for Bournemouth. West Ham 16th, 17th.
I think they'd snap your hands off for that, to be fair. I've got, I mentioned it before, I've got Palace 17th. I really do think they'll struggle without Zaha. I think the influence he's had on that team for so long in terms of his goals, not only his goals, but it's just his ability to carry the team forward. You know, his ability on the ball, off the ball. You've seen it plenty of times when he was up against Trent. He only has to play that long diagonal ball, and suddenly you really are on the back foot. So I think they'll miss him immensely, and I think they'll struggle for goals because of it. So I've got them 17th. I've got, and I mentioned before, I think there'll be a bit of a gap. I think Bournemouth will do okay. And you've got them 15th, I've got them 16th. I really like the coach, Areola, and it does depend. Areola. It does depend whether his style, you know, whether he's going to be able to implement his style quick enough, because he's very much like a Bielsa type coach where he has to, you know, really go after teams. And I think for that reason, if he can get it right, they might catch enough teams cold to get enough points. But I think they'll be one of them, a bit like Leeds, where they'll concede bags of goals, but I think they'll score enough to stay in the league comfortably. I've got Everton slightly above them. I haven't obviously put points, but I think we'll do enough. I agree with you. I don't think you're far wrong with your assessment. The business in the window so far has not been good enough. Even if we do get players in late in the window, it's going to take Dyche a while to get them into the way he wants them to play. You know, we're going into this Fulham game without Dwight McNeil, who was one of our better players at the end of last season. He's out for a month. Dominic Calvert-Lewin's still not fit. Tamari Gray's on his way out, and there's still, you know, Chimiti still hasn't been confirmed yet. We've got Atike apparently coming in from PSG, but again, two young forwards that, you know, are coming into the Premier League pretty cold, so it'll be tough to rely on them. But I think, you know, I think we've got a solid enough foundation there. I think our back four, you know, a midfield unit will get a lot more clean sheets than we obviously did under Lampard. I think those points will be key. I think we'll be much better at home. We'll be much better on set plays, you know, for and against, and I think that'll be enough to keep us out of trouble.
So basically, from what I'm saying there, for you, just like correct me if I'm wrong, and I agree the point that this is the point you're making. It's more about the Sean Dyche effect is why you're going to be going from relegation to 15. You know, he's had a pre-season with them. They know him more. That's essentially why you think you're going to improve.
I just think we've got more clean sheets. I think we've got as good a back five, including the keeper, as anyone in that bottom half. You know, I think, you know, we've got England's number one, regardless of whether I thought we should have cast in him or not. He's still a top keeper. Patterson is fully fit, which will be massive for us at right back. We've got one very defensive left back in Michalenko. We've got a very experienced left back in Ashley Young, Tarkovsky, and various other centre backs to play alongside him. And, you know, we've got defensive midfielders like Ganagai, you've got Takore will be in there, you've got Anana, you've got James Garner. I think there's enough players there that'll keep us organised and get us valuable clean sheets. And I think we'll be a threat on set plays. I think that'll be enough, as you say, to from a Sean Dyche perspective, to get us enough points to stay out of trouble.
And just because I know as the sportscast go on week by week, there will become a bit more Liverpool Everton orientated. But just on Everton there, would you be happy then with 15?
Yeah. Listen, any fan who's going to disagree with that, I'll take it on all day, because I would literally, what we need is a season with as little stress as possible. And I've said it to you a few times, and I've said it on the sportscast. I think if we can get a full season under the belt of Patterson, if we get a full season under the belt of James Garner, if we can get, again, some of the younger players in and around there, those couple of young strikers that we might bring in, if we can keep Calvert-Lewin fit, I think it needs to be a season of stability and get into next summer's window with financial fair play behind us and with the new stadium on the horizon. Then there's a lot more reason to be optimistic then.
Yeah, mate, I hope for you and any blue mates just do have that stress less season. The next three, mate, I've got Burnley, which again, I don't know why I never put them in my surprise package, because if any team get promoted and finish 14th, I think it's a great effort. Got them in 14th place. Got Crystal Palace at 13th. Maybe I've not took as much kind of information from the dealings, and I know Zaha has a big miss, but I've got them finishing 13th. And like you say, my surprise package was Notts Forest. I've got them finishing 12th. I think, again, like I mentioned before, the players they brought in, Forest, something crazy, like what, 15 players or something they brought in. They spent a lot of money. I just think if you get them half gelling together, you've got to put a bit of a run for that mid-table. So, yeah, Forest 12th, Palace 13th, Burnley 14th for me.
No, I agree with you on Forest, and the other factor is they got a top manager, Steve. You know, a fair play to the owners for backing him. Steve Cooper. I've worked under Coops at the academy. He was my boss, and he's a tough fella, very very good coach. He's got a good backroom staff, and I think for that reason, as you say, with the signings gelling or having the opportunity to gel, I've got them 14th. So I've got them 14th. I've got Brentford 13th. I think it'll just be a bit of a mare season for Brentford. I think they're going to struggle a little bit with Ivan Toney, but another team with a top manager who I think will adapt fine. Burnley, as I've said, my surprise package, I've got them in 12th, which will be a remarkable season for the team that's just come up. So yeah, that's my 14, 13, 12.
Yeah, so getting up to the mid-table then, for in 11th place I've got Fulham, 10th place I've got Brentford, and 9th place I've got Brighton. Again, I thought Brentford, similar to you, what you said there, Ivan Toney, I think they will struggle to start the season. But then I also think as well, it gives a team like Brentford then a chance for players to step up as well. And I think potentially they could. I've got them finishing bang in 10th, Fulham 11th, and Brighton 9th as well. And I think that'll be disappointing for Brighton when you look at what they did last season. But I think when you look at the players they've lost as well, I don't think, a team like Brighton can complain too much for finishing 9th, really.
No, definitely. I've got Brighton 11th, which would be a drop off for them, obviously, from a positional point of view. I've gone through that. 10th, I've got Fulham. I think Marco Silva, for me, the longer Marco Silva stays at a team and has the chance to coach them week in, week out. I said this at Everton, we obviously weren't very patient with him. I think the better they'll do. There is a little bit of... I haven't spoke to a Fulham podcast on the Across the Park podcast yesterday. They were saying there's a little bit of unrest at the moment. They're really worried about Silva potentially leaving, just because he hasn't been backed in the market. But, if that isn't the case and he stays around and they maybe get a player or two in, I think they'd be fine in 10th position. Above them, I've got West Ham in 9th. I think West Ham will do just fine in 9th. I think for the reasons I said before, I think more of a stable season. I think 9th will be a decent finish for them. Although West Ham fans will be disappointed given that they've gone from winning a European trophy, but it's a chance for another attack on Europe in a superior competition. So it'll be interesting to see how they do it now.
Getting up to the business end of the table then with our spots for 6th, 7th, and 8th. So in 8th spot, I've gone for Aston Villa. Again, I'm not actually sure where Villa finished last season. Again, I've got them as my surprise package, but they'll have a 7th. So I think they'll have a great season and then finish one below what they did last season. Doesn't make sense, but we spoke about it. Aston Villa in 8th, got Spurs in 7th, and Newcastle in 6th. I mean, it was a coin toss between who's going to finish above Newcastle and Spurs. I think they're both in really strange times. I think, obviously the last few years, Spurs have been the biggest side, and I think it could be just a bit of a shift where, Newcastle now are potentially going to be that kind of Spursy team that are maybe always on the edges of the top 4, if you like. I know they were top 4 last season, and I think Spurs, if we're led to believe Kane might go, just could see them start dropping down that table a bit, and Newcastle potentially heading up the table, albeit not as high last season. So I think, Newcastle 6th, Spurs 7th, Aston Villa 8th.
These 3 positions for me are the 3 positions that they could finish in any order. As in, like, the team that I've got to finish 8th could finish 7th and 6th and whatever. So I've gone Spurs 8th, Chelsea 7th, and Villa 6th. I think Spurs, look, whichever way it goes, whether Kane stays or Kane goes, I mean, and that could be a factor. Look, if Kane stays, he very easily could finish 6th. If he goes, I think it's going to be a season of transition, very much so. And I think 8th will be the best he'll do. I think if you're relying on Richarlison, And a Son, Son getting back the form that he did a couple of years ago, I think it's a dicey game. And plus, you'd need to keep Son, Kulusevski and Richarlison fit pretty much all season to really have a crack at 6. So I've got them finishing 8 because of the insecurity or the uncertainty, I should say, around the Kane situation. I've got Chelsea 7th. Again, I look at the team now. It's a much younger team with all of the turnover of the team, players going to Saudi. I think they'll play some good football. I think they'll be a better outfit and a more organised unit than last season. But I think it's going to take them a couple of seasons to get back in the mix for me of around the top 4. So I've got them 7th. And then I've got Aston Villa 6th. A big step up for them into 6th position. I think they're more stable. I think they've got a coach who knows their team, who knows the system, who's brought in 2 or 3 players as opposed to Chelsea having to bring in 5, 6 and get rid of 5 or 6. So I think the teams that have to make the fewer tweaks are the ones who will maybe kick on a little bit more this season. And for that reason, I've got Villa finishing 6th.
It's interesting that you don't think Pochettino's going to have the desired effect. I mean, I agree with what you're saying. He's, a couple of seasons maybe is what they need. But I just think, he is what he did. I'm only thinking, I've got them actually as 5th. I just think what he did with Spurs, that was wasn't an average thing. Listen, any team with Harry Kane is not an average team, but I think he done really well with them.
He finished 11th this season though, so if you're brought in, it was 11th or 10th? I think it was 11th, wasn't it?
It was a mad season for them, though, wasn't it?
And that's what I mean. Though, if you're coming in and you finished, let me just look now. It's not that season. So they finished 12th on 47 points. I know it was a mad season, I get it, but you can finish 7th in the Prem.
It didn't seem that long before the end of the season where Liverpool and Chelsea were neck and neck on who might give a last little late run.
Right, so you're telling me now, I'm not arguing with you, by the way, although I am. If you're telling me that you reckon Chelsea will finish 5th, you're expecting them to get in or around 67 points. Last season, they got 44. That's a massive jump, that.
Mate, there was so much instability. The World Cup was bang on in the middle of the season. I think that...
Who's their player who's going to get them the goals to get them to 5th?
You don't know this fucking Bowley fella, by the time we finish recording...
Bowley can't score though, can he? Who's going to score the goals to get them to 5th?
Bring someone like Neymar in, something like that, you know what I mean? Honestly, it wouldn't surprise me. Before the window closes, Chelsea do more business. And, it's purely, when you say it like that, it does seem like I'm thinking,
40, I mean, you should have them as not the surprise package, but the biggest,
maybe
20 points. Maybe 20 to 25 points. That's a big jump, that.
Yeah, maybe I should have put them as my surprise package. I'm purely putting it down to the Poch effect. I just think he's a really good man. I think he was very hard done by at PSG. Maybe he won't bring in Neymar in because I think they had a bit of murder when he was over there. But I just think, I suppose, yeah. I just think, listen, he was brought in for a Chelsea rebuild. Now, whether that's this season or next season, they're going to have the January window as well. I don't know. I just think they'll do well.
Look, stranger things have happened, definitely.
I also agree where that kind of 6th, 7th, 8th spot, even as 5th, could go anywhere. But moving on to the next 3, and then we'll leave the top 2. So the 3rd, 4th, 5th place, I've got Chelsea finishing 5th. I think Arsenal finishing 4th. Or maybe should have put them as my drop off as well. I think if Arsenal were to win the league, it would have to be last season. I know they won the Charity Shield last week, but I just think Declan Rice, as much as I rate him as a player, I don't think he's this kind of, wow, he's going to, bring all the trophies home. Now, I think they're going to struggle to score goals. Won't really get the Havertz appointments. I think sending, 60 million on him. I don't think he's going to guarantee you many, many goals.
Was it that much?
Sure, it was, yeah.
It wasn't that much. Definitely wasn't that much.
What you find out that for me then while I tell you how much Arsenal are going to drop off. I think also, the Champions League, if they want to start taking that serious as well, and I think when teams can kind of, they do so well to go so kind of toe to toe with City for such long periods, they spent so many days at the top. I think then the fans start expecting, we almost want to run for our money in all the cup competitions. So before you know it, Arsenal playing Champions League, they put, a half-decent team out in the League Cup, the FA Cup. Games start piling up, and it can become difficult. And I think if Everton's going to, drop off, it's going to be that second place finish that they got last season. And I can't see them finishing higher than 4th. So I've got Chelsea in 5th for the Poch effect. Bit of a drop-off with Arsenal, finishing 4th. And I've got Man United finishing bang where they finished last season in 3rd place. Listen, they've got, Champions League back now, which was one step better than the Europa League they were in last season. I think they'll have a great season. United, I think they'll be a lot closer to the top 2. I just think they'll add it in the Champions League again. There's still a bit of a rebuilding process going on under Ten Hag. But I think, although that keeper had a couple of howlers, I think he will be a good addition. It sounds terrible as well. And I think he'll be a decent defender. It looks like he's going to West Ham. But I think Harry Maguire, to me, symbolises Man United in many ways. Do you know what I mean? I think, Van Dijk went to Liverpool, and that almost, getting Van Dijk in January was a bit like, hey, we're on to something here. I think when Harry Maguire went to Man United, had such a poor, wouldn't even say start, just a poor period with them. He almost symbolises how far off United are. They've got rid of him. And I just think they'd be more solid. I think they'd be a lot closer to top 2. And I've got them finishing 3rd.
No, fair enough. So I've got Newcastle 5th. I think for the same reason that I said with Villa, I think they've just made 2-3 clever signings. I think Tonali in midfield will be a massive boost for them. I think Isak will be a much better player with the experience of last season. I think he's a top striker. And I think him and Callum Wilson between them will do really well and get bags of goals for them. So I think even though, for them it'll be a drop-off of one position, I think they'll do well to be able to oust a Chelsea with Pochettino, with Villa, with, Emery, who I think is a top coach, and obviously Spurs to finish ahead of them. I think it'll still be a great achievement for them with their first Champions League season. So I think 5th, whether the Geordies agree or not, I think it'll be a good finish for them. I've got Man United in 4th. I think they'll compete a lot better. I'm not sure the points tally will see them finishing closer to the top, but I just think generally, I can't see them, for example, getting beat, what was it, 8-0 at Anfield or something, or whatever this mad score was. Yeah, I just can't see games like that happening very often. I think they'll be a lot more consistent. I think, I wouldn't say it's a rebuilding season, but I think it'll be a season where they'll want to be going into those games against the top 2 or 3 and going, look, we want to win there. We're going there to win. We're not sitting back and waiting for our chances to play on the break, which they may have done a lot more last season. But I think 4th is as good as they'll do. And unfortunately, Andy, I've got Liverpool in 3rd. I disagree with you on Arsenal. I'm not saying that Declan Rice is a world beater, but I think he'll be there, Jordan Henderson, who's just going to kind of knit the midfield and defence together a little bit more. He's more of a leader on the pitch. I wouldn't say he's £100 million worth of technical ability, but I think he's a proper captain. I think he's done it for England in the same way, and I think he'll do it for Arsenal. I think although, them finishing, I've just given away my 2nd place, but I still think Arsenal will be there or thereabouts.
I hope you're wrong, I'll be honest. I have got Liverpool finishing 2nd. I just think Liverpool cannot have a season like they did last season. It's just, they can't. I think that it was just unheard of, really, to think that they had that season under Klopp. No one's seen it coming, and I think Klopp won't allow it to happen again. That being said, though, I don't think it's going to be one of those seasons where we're going to win the league. I don't think we're going to get anywhere close to City. I think it's City's once again, and I think they'll run away with it again. I don't think it might be the kind of 101 points which they got, a couple of times when we were chasing them. But I think comfortably in the 90s, mid 90s, it'll be City's league wrapped up pretty early on. It pains me to say it. I think Liverpool a lot better season, but again, nowhere near the kind of 19-20 season when we actually done it.
I do agree with you, by the way. I kind of brushed past Liverpool. I wasn't doing that on purpose. I do think you'll be miles better. I think the signings you've made have been good. I still think you could have done with a couple more players. If I was a Liverpool fan, I'd still be a little bit disappointed. Look, if you can get the Caicedo one over the line, that's huge as well. And I think, if I'm honest, out of the 3, if he comes in, he'll be the biggest coup. And I'm sure he will from a fee point of view in terms of how much you pay for him. But I think they're clever signings. I think it's been long overdue, that midfield overhaul. And I agree with you on Harvey Elliott. He's very talented kid, and I think he'll get a lot more game time, and I think he'll contribute a lot more this season. But yeah, and I also think the evolution of Trent's position will be a huge, boost for you in playing further up the pitch. I think he'll be a bigger influence on the team from an attacking point of view, and I think for Hughes, more importantly, he'll be less of an influence on the defence, because you'll have midfielders around there who are going to cover the gaps, or maybe players playing in that position. Caicedo's, look, that's another factor, by the way. Sorry, Caicedo's more than capable of playing right back, and I think that could be a dangerous weapon for you to be able to flip those two around.
I don't want to come across as really negative there as well. I really kind of sounded a bit of, I just think, as a fan, I am really excited at the start of the season. I hated the end of last season. Super excited to see the likes of Harvey Elliott, Nunez. I've got as my surprise packages. To see McAllister play looks so lovely on the ball. Szoboszlai looks great. This new role that Trent's going to have, Van Dijk as captain. So many things to get excited about as a Red. It's just the fact that it's City. It's Man City. It's, Liverpool need to be at 110% from minute 1 in August to, minute what looks to be 110 in May, for 38 games to even have a sniff of getting close to that league title. Yeah, not being negative on Liverpool, I just think despite City becoming weaker with the sale of Gundogan and Mahrez, there was even talk of Kyle Walker going and Bernardo Silva.
Yeah, Bernardo Silva.
I just think it's City. At the end of the day, it's Man City. It's frustrating as it is. They're unbelievable. I wouldn't put it past them to do at least, the double again, maybe even the treble again. It just, as a Red, it's just annoying. It's hard to get super excited about Liverpool when you just know how good they can be and how ruthless they can be.
I think there might still be a few maybe outgoings. I think something might still happen before the end of the window at City. The reason I say that is the fact that it's almost become public that they're trying to get Paqueta. Suggested one of those players might go, but I still don't think it's going to be enough to cause a drop off. You watch the Community Shield, or the Charity Shields, I'll always call it. Well, how good Cole Palmer is now as well. Like he looks as good as your Fodens and Ronaldo Silvas, and he fits into that team perfectly. They brought Gvardiol in as well from Leipzig, who's an outstanding defender. The fact that they're considering letting Laporte go just shows how far they've come on a from a defensive point of view, let alone the attacking options. So yeah, I agree with you. I think City, I wouldn't say it's going to be a cakewalk, but I think they'll certainly win it by a good 6, 7, 8 points.
We've done an alright job there of going through most Prem teams, what they've done in the summer, what they kind of look forward to, and we've given our 20 kind of positions. So I enjoyed that, mate. Nice one.
I'm absolutely sweating now, by the way. As you can probably tell, I'm sitting outside. It's getting the sun's just beaming on me.
These August streamyards, thankfully, come the end of August. We'll be back in the new look studio. And I
wouldn't say I'm thankful about that, like.
Yeah, well, Baltic Mario, get one of there. Yeah. But no, nice one, everyone who stuck with it through StreamYard. Once again, if you want to get involved in the fantasy football, you don't have to be on Patreon. Anyone can join. If you're a fan of the pod, get involved. Just message the podcast on any of our social channels. It's £20 entry. The winner last year won £1,000, and we give prizes out every 5 weeks. Also, if you do want to take the fantasy football serious, we've got ourselves a secret scout for the fantasy football, and he's done a detailed analysis and summary on the players you want in and the players you maybe don't. That's live on our Patreon now. Prem's back, the footy's back, and yeah, looking forward to it. Nice one again, Gary. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.